Here are 10 events that took place on May 31st in history. In 455 CE, on May 31st, Vandal forces led by King Genseric entered the city of Rome following the death of Emperor Petronius Maximus, who was killed while attempting to flee as the Vandals approached. The city's gates were opened after negotiations involving Roman officials and religious leaders. Over the following days, Vandal groups removed valuables from public buildings, religious structures, and private residences, including metalwork, stored goods, and ceremonial objects. Members of the household and other captives were transported to North Africa. Contemporary and later historical sources document the event as a major incursion into Rome during the final decades of the Western Roman Empire, noting the removal of material wealth and the transfer of prisoners. On May 31st, 1578, English navigator Martin Frobisher departed from Plymouth with a fleet of 15 ships on his third expedition towards the Arctic regions of North America. The voyage included miners, soldiers, and settlers, reflecting plans to establish a permanent English presence and extract mineral ore previously collected on earlier voyages. Frobisher sailed towards Baffin Island and entered the inlet now known as Frobisher Bay, where additional quantities of black rock were gathered. The expedition also surveyed coastlines and waterways in search of a northwest passage. Subsequent analysis in England determined that the ore did not contain commercially valuable metals, but the voyage contributed to early English mapping and documentation of the Canadian Arctic. In 1669, on May 31st, Mount Etna in Sicily was in the final phase of a month-long eruption that produced extensive lava flows across the volcano's southern slopes. The eruption had begun in March and affected numerous settlements, damaging agricultural land, homes, and infrastructure. Lava reached the outskirts of Catania, altering sections of the city's fortifications and reshaping nearby terrain. Written accounts from the period describe the scale of the flows, the displacement of residents, and the long-term changes to the landscape. Geological studies identify the 1669 eruption as one of Etna's most significant events of the 17th century in terms of lava volume and geographic impact. On May 31st, 1910, the Union of South Africa was formally established through the unification of 4 British territories: the Cape Colony, Natal, the Transvaal, and the Orange River Colony. The new political entity became a self-governing dominion within the British Empire. Administrative structures, parliamentary systems, and national offices were inaugurated on this date, including the installation of Louis Botha as the first Prime Minister. Official documents from the period record the constitutional arrangements, the transfer of authority from colonial administrations, and the establishment of a centralized government. The date is widely cited in legal and governmental records as the beginning of the Union's political existence. On May 31st, 1859, the great bell of the clock tower at the Palace of Westminster in London, later known as the Big Ben, was heard striking the hour for the first time. The bell cast at the Whitechapel Bell Foundry weighed more than 13 tons and was installed as part of a new clock mechanism designed for accuracy and reliability. Shortly after operations began, a crack developed in the bell, leading to adjustments in the hammer's striking position and the bell's orientation. Despite the modification, the bell continued in service and the clock tower became a widely recognized feature of London's architectural landscape. Official records and engineering documents from the period describe the installation process and early performance of the mechanism. In 1859, on March 31st, Queen Victoria signed the letters patent that formally created Queensland as a separate colony, ending decades of administrative control under New South Wales. This decision marked the political birth of Queensland and reflected the region's growing population, expanding pastoral economy, and increasing desire for self-governance. The separation laid the foundation for Queensland's distinct identity within Australia, shaping its own institutions, laws, and political culture. It also accelerated development in the northern regions, encouraging new settlements, infrastructure projects, and migration that would transform the colony over the decades that followed. On March 31st, 1879, the first venue named Madison Square Garden opened at Madison Avenue and East 26th Street in New York City. The structure, built on the site of a former railroad depot, was designed as a multipurpose arena capable of hosting exhibitions, sporting events, concerts, and public gatherings. The facility included an open central space, seating areas, and adaptable staging for various types of performances. Over time, the building was replaced by later iterations of Madison Square Garden at different locations. But the 1879 opening marked the beginning of the name's association with major indoor arenas in New York. Contemporary reports documented the building's capacity, design features, and early events. On May 31st, 1889, the South Fork Dam above Johnstown, Pennsylvania, failed after prolonged rainfall raised the water level in Lake Conemaugh. When the dam collapsed, a large volume of water moved rapidly down the Little Conemaugh River Valley, destroying homes, factories, and infrastructure in several communities. Debris accumulated at multiple points along the river, including at a stone railroad bridge near Johnstown. More than 2,200 deaths were recorded, making it one of the deadliest disasters in 19th century United States history. Relief operations were organized locally and nationally, including a major effort by the American Red Cross. Government reports, engineering analysis, and eyewitness accounts provide detailed documentation of the event and its aftermath. On May 31st, 1970, a magnitude 7.9 earthquake struck off the coast of Peru near the Ancash and La Libertad regions. The seismic event caused widespread structural damage in numerous towns and cities and triggered a massive landslide from Mount Huascaran. The landslide buried the towns of Yungue and Ranrahirca under rock, ice, and debris. Government records, Geological Surveys, and international reports document the timing, magnitude, and the geographical impact of the earthquake. The event remains one of the most extensively recorded national disasters in Peruvian history, with detailed accounts of rescue operations, regional effects, and long-term reconstruction efforts. On May 31, 1962, Adolf Eichmann was executed by hanging at Ramla prison in Israel after being convicted of crimes against humanity, war crimes, and related charges. Eichmann had been a senior official in Nazi Germany's SS and was involved in organizing the deportation of Jewish populations during World War II. After the war, he lived in Argentina under an assumed identity until he was located and brought to Israel by Israeli agents in 1960. His trial, which began in 1961, included testimony from numerous witnesses and extensive documentary evidence. Following the completion of legal appeals, the sentence was carried out and his remains were cremated and dispersed at sea outside Israeli territorial waters. On May 31, 2005, Vanity Fair published an article identifying former FBI official Mark Felt as Deep Throat, the confidential source who provided information to Washington Post reporter Bob Woodward during the Watergate investigation in the early 1970s. The article included statements from Felt and his family confirming his involvement. Following publication, Woodward and Carl Bernstein acknowledged Felt as the individual who had supplied background information and guidance during their reporting on the Watergate break-in and related political activities. The disclosure resolved decades of speculation about the source's identity and added a documented name to a previously anonymous figure in U.S. investigative journalism history. Those were the 10 events that took place on May 31st in history.